All right, that's not your testimony. Maybe you've got a child who's under the age of 21, still living under your roof, supposed to be playing by your rules, but they tried to tell you what they wasn't going to do. Trouble is everywhere. We find here that the prophet Elijah is going through some trouble. I started a little slow, but I have something to say because Elijah had been prophesying, had been doing the will of God. He did exactly what God told him to do, but he still found himself in. All right, some of you have been out here living your best life, doing whatever you could to make it and survive. You believe that because I said my prayers, because I came to church on Sunday morning, because I paid my tithes and put a little extra in the pastor's aid, that I'm not supposed to have trouble. But can I tell you that the enemy cares nothing about your zip code? The enemy cares nothing about your pedigree. The enemy cares nothing about how fabulous you look or how well you can speak. The enemy does not care what you do for God. His only goal is to destroy the kingdom of heaven. And if he can use you to do it, he'll certainly try. Well, can I tell you what got Jezebel so upset? Because you know she was really running the show. Ahab was the king. They said to me some years ago, they said, you know, the man may be the head, but the woman is the neck. She can turn that head any direction she wants it to go. We're going to act sanctified Christians. I love my beautiful wife who's in the house today. I do my very best to keep her happy. Because if I got a crook in my neck, can't hardly walk straight. Jezebel is mad at Elijah. Not because he prophesied. Not because he tried to convert people to the Lord. She wasn't mad at him because he had been doing these things all along. But Jezebel couldn't handle it, Bishop, when Elijah got bold enough to say, I'm willing to put my God against your God. Elijah says, you know what? We're going to let you pray to your God, see what he does for you. Then I'm going to talk to my God, see what he does for me. Elijah says, you know what, Lord? I need you to show yourself. Elijah begins to call down fire from heaven. What is so impressive is that no sooner he closed his mouth, it's almost as if a volcano erupted and flames fell from the heavens. Jezebel and Ahab were still having that little conversation, and nothing happened. So can I tell you that many times the reason people are after you is not because they want what you have, but rather that they can't stand that you know how to use it. What I mean to say here is that many times people can't stand that you're the one that got the promotion and you know how to flourish it, simply because whatever they were trying when they were in a position wasn't working. Jealousy begins to set in when what you're doing is actually working. So can I tell you that the reason you may be going through what you're going through right now is not necessarily because God is angry with you, but because the enemy realized that what working with is working for you. He cannot stand the fact that when you talk to your God, things that don't make sense begin to happen for you. He doesn't understand that when you talk to your God, you could be rife with disease. Look like the doctor can give you a bad report. He could tell you, like he told me, that you have an aggressive stage of leukemia and we're going to have to treat you. And I tell him, God said I don't need the treatment. And he's complex and confounded because he doesn't understand how this God of yours can remove something that science is supposed to move. But then when I talk to the Lord and ask him, what must I do to be saved from this situation? God gives me a strategy, says you need to fast for a amount of 40 days and 40 nights, and at the end of the fast, go back. When you get back there, they tell you there's nothing there. Funny part about the story is that when I went back, there was nothing there. The enemy does not like it when your stuff works. And so the reason that he sends those demons and devils after you to chase after you and to mess with you is because he cannot stand that you are on your way up out of the mess that he thought he set. Devil cannot handle your success. So here it is. Elijah begins to run away. He says, look, she told me I got 24 hours. I'm going to get out of here in 24 minutes. Elijah takes off running. And he had his servant with him initially, and he had to leave his servant behind. Sometimes when we are trying to escape things that the enemy has set up for us, there are some things we end up leaving behind. Can I tell you that if you plan to escape the enemy, you got to drop your dead weight? The Bible says, lay aside every weight of the sin that so easily besets you. The devil will not tempt you with something that you care nothing about. He will only tempt you with the thing that is easy for you to get caught up in. The thing about it is, you thought that you had built up a tolerance until you got in a perfect environment for the enemy to do his thing. Many of you will look at me and say, well, you know, my temptation was drinking at the club, so I don't go to the club anymore. Don't you know that the devil knows how to find you outside of the club? This is not rocket science. He does not need the club to bring you back to drinking. All he needs to do is send you that final notice in the mail and say you got less than 30 days to pay it off. And you're trying to figure out how to get a drink to take the edge off. You don't have to go back to the club to be tempted with the same thing. And so when you begin to compartmentalize the things that so easily get you off track and say, well, it's only in this circumstance. The enemy's got you real good. Why does he have you, Jeremy? He has you because you haven't figured out that it wasn't the club that was your problem. You haven't figured out that it wasn't the blue light splashing and the red light splashing that was your problem. You hadn't quite figured out that your issue was not the fact that you knew the address to park at. Your issue was the fact that you felt like you were missing something enough to go there in the first place. Your issue is that you need to get some new business. Elijah takes off running, Elliot. He says, listen, I'm not going to stand around and wait for Jezebel to kill me. Dr. Gilbert, I got perplexed for a minute because later I read in the text in chapter 19 where Elijah begins to pray to God and he said, I wish you would just take my life now. He said, I've had enough of this. I'm over it. Now, I got confused, Evangelist Matt, when he was praying to God to take his life. Why didn't you just stay and let Jezebel kill you? If you were so ready to die, why didn't you just let her kill you? Instead of running away and trying to pray about it and asking the Lord to take it. Then the Lord got to speaking something to me. He said, you got to be careful what you allow depression to do to you. He said, because depression will have you asking for stuff that you really don't want. He said, when you get into a sunken state and into a sunken place and a low place, you begin to ask for things that you really don't want in the first place. And so then you begin to make these requests to God, saying, God, if only you would do this for me, then I would do that. And then God does it for you, and you still don't do what you promised to do because of the simple fact that you asked for something you didn't really want. So I want to encourage you at this point. Be careful how you communicate with God in your low season. Be careful what you ask Him for in your low season. Turn to somebody that has a nice smile. Tell them, be careful. All of you have a nice smile. Turn to somebody. Be careful what you ask God in your low season. All right, so then Elijah moves off of that prayer. And he hears from the Lord that he needs to go to Mount Horeb. So he begins this 80-mile journey to get there by foot. And total, the route that he went was a long way to get there. And so, in fact, theological scholars believe that he actually went 200 miles instead of 80. Here's the thing, when you are going through, a lot of times you take a lot of unnecessary steps to try to find your way out. And so this is what Elijah found himself doing, taking unnecessary steps. And so a trip that should have only taken about 15 days took him 40. Because he was walking practically in circles, tormented by the fact that he thought the enemy was going to catch up with him. I don't want to lose your attention. I'm going to close this out pretty shortly. But then Elijah finally makes it to the mountain, which is coincidentally the same mountain that God told Moses to go to when he gave him the 10 Commandments. And he said, I need you to sit here and listen to what I have to say. Many times the Lord will allow you to go to that hard, rocky, mountainous place just to speak to you. And so when Elijah gets there, I noticed something in the text. The initial verse, verse 9, says that Elijah had a word from the Lord that said, what? What are you doing here? Yeah. Now, I know the Bible can sometimes seem repetitive, but you usually don't get the same question from God in the same chapter, 3 or 4 verses later. Can I paint the picture for you? Yeah. Elijah is asked by God, what are you doing here? And then Elijah begins to list off all of these reasons as to why, you know, Lord, you told me to go talk to these people. You told me to prophesy to them. You told me, turn it down just a little bit. You told me to go in and do all of these things. And now I am the only prophet left here because I did your will. Yeah. God asked him one question. What are you doing here? Yeah. You'll catch it in a minute. What are you doing here? I didn't want to know what you were doing. I want to know what are you doing here. Yeah. I'm not concerned about what you did in the past. I want to know why are you here? Because I know you just told me that you no longer wanted to be in this earth, but I want to know why are you still here? Then Elijah begins to give him this conversation that goes back and forth and spouts out all of these excuses as to why it is evidence of a good man are ordered by the Lord. And when God tells you where to go to meet him, why don't you go there? And when you get there, you'll find out that what you were running from is nowhere in your view. This enemy that you see today, you will see no more forever. So here it is. Let me rush to a close here. Elijah was in the same mountain where Moses received the 10 Commandments, heard directly from God. Something strange happens. God asks him this question, and then he asks the same question later on. And so I notice a difference, Jeremy. Initially, in verse 9, when God asked him, the Bible says the word came to him. Later, in verse 13, the Bible says the word of the Lord came at him. So here's the key. What happened when God asked him the first time, he wasn't hearing an audible voice like he did the second time. In other words, God spoke to him internally first, and he spoke the question out of his own mouth and then answered the question. Here's what happens. Many times, I don't want to confuse you here, but many times the Lord will give you something to speak. You'll be asking a question, and before you know it, the answer comes out right behind it. It's because a lot of times the answer is in you, not around you. That's not the major point, though, because when you get down to verse 13, the Bible says, then he heard the word of the Lord. See, when you still sitting here, God had to ask him again because he ain't moved. You already had the feeling on the inside that I need to be doing something different. Why are you still stuck here? You've already heard the Lord tell you what you need to do, Sister Gilbert, to get out of this situation. Why are you still in this place? Why are you still in this darkness when I've already told you that the shadows of death may be everywhere, but you don't have to fear any evil? Why? Because I am with you, my rod and my staff. They comfort you all of that table. So I'm feeling good now. So walking in the presence of my surely goodness. I'm versus you calling me all the days of my life. I wish you'd take to somebody high five and tell them I got bodyguards.
I got mine.
Goodness and mercy. Follow me. All the days of my life. Can I tell you this? This part of the text really got me. It says, there was an earthquake, and the mountains shook, and the rocks cracked. But that wasn't God. It says there was fire that broke out all around him. But that wasn't God. Says the winds were howling and blowing and tormenting him, but that was not God. Can I stop here to tell you today that some of this stuff you're going through, that ain't God? He said, I'm not in that mess that you're going through right there. But what I love about it is that immediately after all this stuff got to happening, after all of the shaking and all of the burning and all of the blowing, then you see the presence of God show up. I'm just here to tell you, when you see all hell break loose, you better know God is on the scene. Because it is the presence of God that will cause the enemy to send some stuff your way, just so you don't get what God has for you. Which I have a witness that say, yeah, buddy. That's what God is trying to tell you, that even though all hell is breaking loose around you, that's not me. God is trying to teach you how to discern what you are going through, because many of us have tried to blame him for things that are not his responsibility. Many have said, well, I'm just going through because the Lord is testing me. He's not testing you. He's waiting on you. And while you're sitting there going through this stuff, feeling the clouds of heaviness all around you, God is saying, I want you to watch all of this, and then I want to see if you're still standing. Now, this part of the mountain where Elijah Elijah was standing when it was shaking, he should have fell off of a cliff. But it's nothing but the presence of God. That when everything gets to moving around you, when everything gets to going haywire around you, God says all you got to do is stand. What do you do when you've done all you can? You just stand.
Yeah.
What do you do when your friends turn their back on you? You just stand. What do you do when it seems like you've lost all hope and everything you've tried, all your faith is gone? What do? You just stand. Because God said if you keep on standing, I'll start speaking. Yeah. God said if you just stay there, if you just hold your peace and let the Lord fight your battle, he said all you got to do is be still and I'll just show up and speak to you. God says to him, that second time he says, what are you doing here? And Elijah figured out, and when God asks you, what are you doing here? That means you're not supposed to be here. What? You just said God sent him there. Can I tell you, just because God sent you didn't mean you were supposed to stay? He sent you for a season so that you could understand what his voice was, so that you could understand that these trials, that's not him. But he wanted you to understand that what you're going through now is a result of the fact that I'm about to show up. And I'm about to show out. Turn to somebody one last time and tell them, neighbor, I've got to come out of this.
I've got to come out of this.
I wish you heard somebody else and tell them, neighbor,
I
don't know what you're going through now.
I don't know what you're going through now.
But I've got to come out of this.
I've got to come out of this.
Listen, God is telling you today that no matter how high this mountain is for you, you've got to come out of this. Yeah. I'm just speaking something into your spirit that you have to receive on tonight, because you've been sitting here circling around the mountain. But what I love about God is that he speaks to Elijah and he tells him, this is what I want you to do. I want you to get away from this mountain. He said, because you're exaggerating your problems. What do you mean you exaggerate your problems? Elijah said, Lord, I'm the only prophet left. God looked at Elijah and said, don't you remember when Obadiah was just talking to you back in chapter 18? He said, I had hidden 100 more prophets in another mountain waiting for you. He says, I'm all alone. There's nobody here for me. He said, nobody can understand me, but God said there's still 100 more waiting on you on the other side. And so what I'm here to tell you is that while you're sitting here stressing over it, God has already figured out your solution. You're sitting here talking about you're the only one left, and God said there's 100 more just like you're waiting on the other side. I wish I had somebody that would wait here for you. God coming left for me. God begins to tell me, he says, now this is what I want you to do. You've been carrying this for too long, so I need you to get up from where you are. And I need you to go and anoint somebody else. Yeah. Can I tell you that you can't hold your position too long? If God is ready for you to move on, you need to let it go. I wish I had somebody that would be a witness with me tonight that said, I'm trusting God to bring me out of this because I don't have to stay in this place. So God is saying, I've got help for you on the other side of the mountain. Wish I had a witness here to say, I've got some help now. So Elijah begins to go over down to find Elisha. And when he finds Elisha, Elisha is working out in the fields. Stay with me, I'm almost done here. So Elisha is out in the fields and he's working and tending to his cattle. The Bible says that he had about 24 cattle out there at the time. And what that means is that Elijah and his family must have been wealthy people, because you were doing good if you had one. But since you have 24, that means you have more than enough. Now watch this. Elijah goes and he begins to speak to Elisha. And he says, listen, God has something for you to do. And so what Elijah does is he has this mantle of the prophet on his shoulders. Stay with me now because I'm getting ready to go home. He has a mantle on his shoulders, and God said, you've got to anoint your successor. I'm here to tell you today that if what you're going through is too much for you, it's time for you to hand it off to somebody else. And so Elijah is sitting here with a mantle, and the Bible says what he did was he took the mantle off and he threw it on him. I said, Lord, why did he throw the mantle on it? The Bible declares that anytime a mantle was thrown, that means you've been adopted.
Yeah.
So what happened to Elisha in that moment is that Elijah said, I'm adopting you, and you've got to come with me. So Elisha turned to Elijah and said, will you give me a second to go tell my parents goodbye? And then Elijah turns to him and said, I ain't got that kind of time. He said, if you can't go now, you can't go at all. I'm going to tell you today, if God has something for you to do, you either go now or you ain't going to make it at all. I wish you turn to somebody and say, go now.
Go now.
Say, I've got to go. I got to get on out of here. And so Elijah throws a mantle on Elisha. And Elisha says, you know what? I'm not going to say goodbye to my parents, because that's not what's important right now. My relationships are not important right now. But I've got to go follow my God. And what he does is he said, I'm going to take everything I own and I'm going to burn it up. I'm going to take everything that's dear to me and I'm going to burn it down. And I'm going to offer it as a sacrifice unto God. I wish I had about 5 people in here that said anything that's not for God, it's not for me. And if it's not for me, I'm going to burn it up. Turn your neighbor, say, neighbor, it's time to burn. It's time to burn. And this is what revival fire is about. It's time to burn it up. So now Elijah, he says, I burned it all up. What do you want me to do? The Lord tells him, feed it to everybody you see. And all I'm just here to tell you is that what you have to burn is going to be your testimony for the future, so that everybody you see, all you do is just tell them what God did for you, and tell them I gave up everything to go with. And by the time Elisha was ready to take over, he got a double portion of what he was initially supposed to get. So I just want to tell you that if you simply do what God is asking you to do, there will be double for your trouble. Because all it takes to get out of where you are is to listen to God and move. That's all it takes. He said, if you just listen to me, try to conserve energy for this third night. But he said, just listen to me. And he said, I literally take what you're going through. He said, I see it and I see you. But what you're going through is not as important as what I've got for you.
Yeah.
And he said, so you may be hurting. You may feel a little down. But what you're going through is not the end. God says, all you got to do is stand up. Say, Lord, I hear you. I'm ready to move. And I'm not going to do this the same way anymore. I see the tears on some of your faces right now, because God is speaking to you and saying, you don't have to do this anymore. You do not have to live like this anymore. And some of you are saved. Most of you are. But you're still living a life that is broken, that is wanting, that is lacking. You've been on the run, trying to get away from those things that have been tormenting. God said, tonight, I'm executing the tormentors. Woo! Jezebel and Ahab can't live here anymore.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to accept the fact
You got to move.
that God is saying to you tonight, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? I'm not going to call you to the altar tonight. I'm going to put a prayer out there for you. Because tonight is reflection. What are you doing here? When you discover that what you're going through now doesn't seem like it's worth the trouble, Romans 8:18 has your prescription For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared to the glory which shall be revealed in you. In other words, God is saying, what you're going through now is not even worth the trouble of thinking about it. Because the glory is coming.
Yeah.
And when the glory comes, it'll all be over in the morning. The Bible says weeping may. Weeping may. That means it has permission to endure for a night. But, which is that conjunction that erases everything that came before it. Just to tell you that joy is coming in the morning. And I heard it said that that morning may not even be the technical AM, but it could be the morning of grief. The morning. So I'm here to tell you today, Psalms 23 says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, making me to lie down in green pastures. And I love this revelation that I got about those green pastures, because I found something out about sheep that go roaming in green pastures. They don't lay down until they are beyond full. So God said, when I told you I'm going to let you lay down in green pastures, what I'm telling you is, when you go to rest, you'll have everything you need to make it. So when you lay down this time, everything you need is already in your belly. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Night of reflection. I just want you to take a moment to reflect on those things that have had you in a place that is uncomfortable. Not all of us are uncomfortable, I understand that. But some of us are. God is asking